Hello. So, as he said, I am Lisa Stephen. I am one of the founders and the executive director of Hope House of Colorado. And I guess what I want to talk to you a little bit about today is who Hope House is, what we do. First of all, I want to thank you for having us here, for having me here. I have a special guest with me today. And I also want to thank you for choosing us as the beneficiary of this event. That's super encouraging, and it means a lot to me and to us. Let me just start by saying that Hope House is an organization that serves parenting teenage moms. And the reason that myself and my husband were two of the people that founded Hope House is because we were teenage parents. We got married when we were 17 years old, and I was still in braces. So all my wedding pictures, I'm smiling like this. Because I didn't want anyone to see my braces. I figured they wouldn't be able to tell how old I was if they couldn't see my braces in my wedding pictures, which is so funny because my husband's in this like lovely 80s mullet, like a true mullet. So I don't know what I was thinking, like as soon as they saw him, I don't know. But fast forward a few years, and we have 3 children at this point, and I have got involved in a group called MOPS, Mothers of Preschoolers, if you're not familiar with them, which is kind of like an international group that does sort of peer support groups for mothers of preschool-age children. And this group has decided that they want to start something called Teen MOPS. So Teen MOPS is a group for teenage mothers of preschool-age children or babies younger. And I'm thinking, okay, this is awesome. I'm going to get involved in this. I love MOPS. I was a teenage mother, seems perfect. So I get involved in the first group that started a Teen MOPS group at our Valley Covenant Church in 1997. And I'm thinking, I got this. Like, this is easy, right? Like, I was a teenage mom. I know what these girls are going through. I get it. And it turns out that I kind of didn't have a clue. So we start this group, and right from the beginning, we get these girls that are a lot different than me. So I was married, for one thing. I had quite a bit of family support. My husband's family was super supportive. And we're working with these girls that's not their story. And I had no clue, I had no idea that there were girls in my neighborhood, in the suburbs. I mean, I think we have this like idea that all poor people live in the inner city somewhere in Denver, or all people who have problems or really rough lives, they're in the inner city in Denver, which is not true. So I've got these girls that are like coming to us during group saying, I'm not safe at home, there's violence going on at home, we don't know when we're going to eat. We're living in a 2-bedroom apartment with like 11 or 12 people, and they're rotating people. And, maybe there's mom is drug abusing, or she's got an alcohol problem. There's almost never 2 parents in the home. And you're just going, okay, I was not equipped. Like, God picked the least equipped people to do this, let me tell you. Besides being a teenage mom. Like, I did not go to college. I don't have a degree in social work or any of that. So you're just like scrambling for resources, like who can we call, who's in the phone book, who does what for teenage moms. And the worst thing is that lots of these girls are technically homeless. They're literally like moving around from like place to place. So, one week they're at mom's, the next week they're at grandma's, then grandma's not really supposed to have that many people in her section in housing, so they get kicked out, they're with a boyfriend. Then they come to you and they say, hey, I'm 17 years old, I've got a 2-year-old, I don't have anywhere to live, like I need somewhere to live. So we start searching, like what's out there, where can we refer these girls when they're technically homeless. And come to find out, back then, there was only one other home that served parenting teenage moms in all of the Denver metro area. So they have 4 bedrooms, that's not quite gonna cut it. And that home has even closed, so at this point, Hope House is actually the only organization that serves parenting teenage moms in a residential capacity in Denver. But that was kind of the beginning of, okay, well, if nobody else is out there doing it, then I guess we need to do something about it. And so, it was really kind of that naive, like, I think when you start something, you almost have to have that naivety. Somebody said that this morning, I'm like, oh, amen. Because you just, you don't know what you're getting into. But we're out there telling the whole world, we're going to start a home for teenage moms. So in 2000, we incorporated as Hope House of Colorado, which sounds really fancy, but it's just going down to the state treasurer's office and writing your name in Hope House of Colorado and paying $50, and all of a sudden you're something. And so you go out and tell everybody you're going to open this home, and you're raising funds, and we're like taking every cheap nonprofit class you can take to learn how to run a nonprofit organization and trying to get our 501c3. And in 2003, we get this opportunity to move into a home and get started. And this is literally like every single day you're doing like one thing to kind of get this ministry going. I was fortunate enough that I could be home, my husband was working, and every day you're making like one call or just trying to get one thing done. 3 years have gone by, you're kind of going, well, maybe this wasn't God's plan. Literally when we were about to give up, we get the call that we can move into this house. It's a farmhouse in Arvada. It's on 69th and Sheridan. And the folks who own that property are going to tear that house down to put townhomes up. But they have this whole process they have to go through to get annexed into the city of Arvada. So they're like, you move in, you'll be there 2 or 3 years, you'll get your program going. It's so much easier to raise money once you have your program up and running, and then you can find another place to go. So we move in, we get our first 2 girls, just sweet girls, both of them homeless, move into the program. Takes us about 5 minutes to figure out that what looked really good on paper, planning for 3 years, doesn't necessarily work with real life people. And so, you're scrambling around trying to like make program changes, and 9 months later we get the call from the homeowner or the landowners that they're gonna go ahead and have to tear the house down because they got annexed into the city of Arvada. And I'm like, well, that's the fastest annexation in the history of time. So we're not ready. We're still working on our program. I haven't even started looking for somewhere else to move these girls. I'm thinking we're going to make these kids homeless all over again. So we get a call like maybe a month later, and the board chair calls up and he says, so we met as a board. We're going to give you the house, but you have to pick it up and move it off our property. So I'm like, well, first of all, is that in the phone book? And back then there was a phone book. I know you guys don't use phone books anymore. So I'm looking in the phone book, literally it's in the phone book. So we find a house mover. Long story short, we get this like crazy loan on the top half of this ranch, this big brick ranch farmhouse, because the basement's gonna get plowed under, so we only have the value of the top half of the house. And we start looking for a place to take this house. And I mean, we've got a realtor looking, and the house mover is telling us, you can only move this house within 7 miles. And I don't know anything about it. I'm like, I don't know if they crack in half. I mean, what happens if you move more than 7 miles? So we're looking. So I get the call from the realtor, like, I don't know, a couple months later, and she says, you guys are done. There's like nothing you can afford within 100 miles, let alone 7 miles. Sorry, I have a cold, of where this house is. So I'm like, all right, why would God give us a house and no land to put it on? And I have lots of these arguments with God, like still today even. I have lots of these arguments. He shakes his head at me all the time. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to go to work tomorrow. I'm going to tell everybody that God gave us a house. He didn't give us land. I don't know. Get there the next morning. I get a phone call from this pastor I've never met in my life before I could tell anybody anything. And this guy says, hey, I'm Pastor Monty from Heritage. And I'm like, okay, nice to meet you on the phone. And he says, are you the people looking for land? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, we have something we want to give you. I don't think I said thank you. I think I just like went, what? Like, who just calls you and gives you land? Like, what? So he says, okay, come on over. So he gives us the address. We get in the car. We drive 4 blocks down and 1 block over, around the corner on 64th and Benton. So there's this, guy standing there, and he literally looks like Santa Claus, like big round tummy, red nose, white beard. I'm not even kidding. Gets out of his car and he goes, so, we just want you to have enough for your house and your playground, whatever you need. So, there you go, and I gotta go to lunch. And I'm like, what just happened? And of course, the deacons got involved after that. It got a lot more complicated once the deacons got involved. I'm just kidding. So we very generously were donated this piece of property by this church, Heritage Community Bible Church. It was a bit more complicated once we started going through the process of subdividing the property from the church's property through the city. But the big surprise out of all of it, and probably the most humbling thing to me, was that we like throw around these church words all the time. Like we say, well, God knows the beginning from the end. Well, that's like really, really big. Like, how do you ever describe like what that means, that God knows the beginning from the end? But I figured it out the day that land was donated to us, and we went over to the city hall and went in there kind of got a little tirade from the city planner, and she said, this is crazy, this isn't going to work, you're going to need to be rezoned, you don't have enough time for that, that'll take you like a year and a half. And, you know, I'm just like, well, I mean, just check what zoning we have, I guess. And it has to be RL, is all I remember. So she goes over and she pulls out this like gigantic map out of this file cabinet, and I can see like up in the corner of this map in green letters it says RL. And she just turns around and looks at me, and I'm looking at her, and she's like, all right, you got the zoning you need. Turns out that the church, way back like 25 years before this, before it was a even heritage community church, had zoned that land for a maternity home. So it's already zoned for a group home. This church has been trying to put like ministry on this land for 25 years, like before I was ever even a teenage mom. That's pretty humbling. It's pretty humbling to know that God knew what He was going to do from the beginning, from the end. And we're not to the end. We're still going, but it's pretty humbling to be a part of that. So fast forward a few more years, you know, actually, it's only about 9 months later, we're getting that house moved onto the field there. It's sitting there, and literally, we call it the house that God built, because literally from like the ground up, from the excavation of the basement to the roof on this thing, it's donated, like piece by piece. And it was crazy. We had a project manager that was volunteering his time for like 18 months. This guy volunteers his time. And he would call me up and he would say, okay, you need such and such. And I would say, well, how do you spell it? Because I don't know what that is. And where do I get it? And I would call up, and one great example. So he says, you need 14 4-feet egress window wells. Now I know what an egress window well is. I did not know at the time. I asked him to spell it, call up this place called White Cup Industries. The guy says, that's so weird. We just had somebody cancel an order for 14 of those things. We'll give them to you and we'll deliver them from Inglewood for free. Thank you, God. Like literally. I mean, and it was not always that easy. There were lots of pain along the way as well, and lots of impatience on my part. But I have so many great stories to tell of how God came through and how God brought a community together really to build that house, because lots of folks got to be involved in that process. So by 2006, we were moving out of our temporary digs and back into that house. By 2007, we had started an additional program, a mentoring program for teenage moms in the community who did not necessarily need a place to live, but needed something. They kind of all needed a community, which I'm going to talk a little bit about. And then in 2009, we started a GED program. So we can put the slide up. I'm going to talk a little bit about teenage parenting. So one thing that's unique about Hope House is that we work with teenage moms who already have children. Most ministries work with either pregnant teenagers or are trying to help teenagers not to become pregnant. But once you are at a point where you're a teenager and you already have a kid, there's very, very little out there for you. So that's one of the things that's unique about Hope House. I think the statistic that surprises people usually the most is that there are about 3,000 babies born to teenagers in the Denver metro area every single year. So even though those numbers have been dropping a little bit, 10 years ago it was about 6,000. So it's actually been a very significant drop. 3,000 babies born to teen moms every single year in this area is an awful lot of babies and an awful lot of teen moms. And there's just not a lot out there for them. And as I kind of shared earlier, these girls are living with, they just have such extraordinary circumstances. It's difficult for them to move towards self-sufficiency. It's difficult for them to kind of get out of the chaos that they're surrounded by. So what we do is we offer lots of programming stuff. So I'll tell you about that, that's awesome. It's not the most important thing, but it's awesome. So the residential program takes about 18 months to get through, between 14 and 18 months. It's the most structured program we offer. It requires the girls to do all of the components of what we offer and finish them and move forward and show progress. We measure in kind of a report card style. We're on the solution. So we offer GED. I think the other thing that surprises people usually is that only a third of teenage moms will ever graduate high school, and fewer than 1% will ever finish college. So that's like a way terrible statistic. Fewer than 1% will graduate college. So we offer GED, we offer college and career help. We offer a career partner program to help girls get jobs with businesses that partner with us in the community. We do parenting classes and life skills classes and financial literacy classes and Bible study, and all of those things are awesome. But none of them are what's like really the most important thing, because we can offer all the tools in the world for self-sufficiency, but if we don't have transformation, if we don't see that they're understanding that God loves them, then we really aren't making eternal progress. So probably the most important thing that we do is create community. And so this is the part where I have to be like honest with you guys. So when Teresa called me and asked me if I could come and speak to you today, I'm like, sure, but what would they ever want to hear from me? Like, we don't have that much in common. I mean, I never even considered us a youth ministry. We work with parenting teenage moms. We kind of consider them adults. They have to be an adult now and take care of this kid and move forward. And I never considered us youth ministry. And honestly, I don't know that many teenage moms that go to youth groups. There just aren't very many, at least not the ones I've met. But there is one exception, and I started thinking about her. And I started thinking about, all right, what do we have in common? What we do have in common is we all want to see hearts transformed. We all want to see kids come to Christ. We all want kids to bump into Jesus. And I think Gabe said this morning, we all want to create family, and that's what Hope House is really about. If we can create a place where these girls feel like they belong, like they're not different from everybody else, they're not fitting in with the adults, not fitting in with the youth, not fitting in with anybody. If they can fit in here, if they feel like they belong, then maybe they'll believe us when we tell them that God loves you, that He has a plan for your life, and that nothing that has happened to you, that nothing you've done is so bad that He stops loving you, nothing that's happened to you is so bad that He stops loving you, nothing so bad that He stops having a plan for you. So I thought that I would bring someone with me today to tell you a little bit about what it could look like to actually be a part of a youth group and make that work, because I do have one amazing example. And her name is Alondra. I'm going to ask her to come up here. I might need do you need is that stand thing? No, you're good? Okay. I'm going to introduce her really quick. So Alondra just graduated from our residential program, which I told you is like the hardest program we have. We tell them it's like getting into the Harvard of Hope House programs. It's difficult. And she did it in record time. And just graduated, which we only have about one graduation a year. So this is a pretty special young lady, and I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about herself.
Hi guys, I'm Alondra. Oops. How are you guys doing today? I'm a little nervous, to be honest, just a little bit. I'm hoping I do good, because I'm taking a speech class, so may you guys... So I'm just here to let you guys know a little bit of how I got involved with my youth group and just a little bit about me. I'm a teen mom, obviously, and that's my little boy right there, and his name is Aiden. We were homeless for a little bit. We were living with people from my church. They were specifically in our youth group, and I called them one day and I just told them, I don't know what I'm going to do. My dad's going to jail. I don't know where I'm going to live. I don't know anything. I'm going to continue to go to school. And they said, let me talk to my husband, but I think you can come live with us. They just offered to let us both in. But anyways, how I found my church. I had a close friend in high school, and I was just trying to find a church to go to because I hadn't gone to church in a long time. And she was very involved with her youth group, and she just told me, just come with me to youth group. So I decided to come because the past youth groups I had gone to were really like hangout time, not really get close to Jesus kind of time. And this youth group just changed me, and they were really concerned about me, and they really wanted to know who I was, and they didn't care that I was a teen mom, which is like, teen moms, for me at least, I thought, I don't want to go to a youth group, like, that's my sin, they can see my sin, and they just took us in, and they helped us, and now I'm actually a leader in our youth group, and I went with them to youth camp, and I just couldn't imagine being anywhere else. And I just think it's really important for other teen moms to get connected with a youth group, because we're still teenagers, even though we're adults. I still have like an inner child where I want to go play frisbee or go to a bonfire. So yeah, that's about it.
You did great. You get an A in speech class. I'll have to tell somebody. It's really hard to talk in front of a group of people. I do it kind of a lot, and I still get super nervous every time. So that was a great job, Alondra. So I just have like a minute to wrap up, and mainly I just want to say, first of all, I was wrong in thinking that I didn't have much in common with people who are here to learn about youth ministry. I have learned something from every single speaker this morning. I took notes under every single one of them. I have stuff I'm going to go back and talk to my staff about implementing. And I have kind of a different perspective on maybe what youth ministry could look like. And I just want to kind of share an example. It was really awesome to have Gabe share this morning actually about family, because I think that's pretty much what all of us do have in common. So one of the things I realized when I was at Alondra's graduation, and we do these big celebrations where we like have a room in a restaurant when we do a residential graduation, because it's a big deal. And we invite, they invite their families, we invite Hope House people. So I'm realizing as I'm, sitting there for her graduation about a month ago, that there's not one biological family member in the room. And I also realized that Alondra didn't actually have one biological family member visit her at Hope House in an entire year of living at Hope House. But that room was packed. It was the most packed residential graduation I have ever seen. I think half her church showed up. So her family was there. So you guys, the thing we do have in common is, if you can create family, you can create transformation. And that's about all I have.